bring in the former Oilers Sportsnet analyst, host of the Mitts Off podcast, Luke Gazdic. Luke, what's going on, man? Happy Friday.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
We're living good.
Well, we're pissed.
I was going to say,
Pissed about Mark Stone. That's bullshit.
You guys want me to get into it right away? I was listening to her before I got on here.
may as well.
What do you think, man?
Give me Vegas early. Give me Vegas round one. I don't know why. I don't understand why this would be such a hot take or tie. You don't want it. They got 5 guys hurt right now. So you're mixing all these guys back into the lineup. It's going to be Stone's first games playing in a while. Conditioning, getting back into it after 2 months is not an easy thing to get straight back into games. Hill looks like a different goaltender after missing 2 months of hockey. The Oilers are on an absolute heater at home. You'll have home ice to start the series. Why not take Vegas right away when they're at their lowest point? They're only going to get better and better as the playoffs go on. Every game that they play, they're going to get better and better. And I just think you're going to get, I don't want to say the worst version of them. It's still a very good hockey team, but you're getting the worst version of Vegas in round one. I also think it's a huge motivator for them. If Edmonton comes in and has the ability to beat them in the first round, I don't want to say smooth sailing after that, but the confidence that you're going to pick up about beating the Stanley Cup champions right away, I don't see why you wouldn't, to be honest. I just think even Tomas Hertl, like the other night, gets his first assist in his first game, but he doesn't look like the same Tomas Hertl. He's just going to get better and better as he gets used to the systems and used to his line mates. I want him early. Slay the dragon early.
Well, but the reality is I don't think they'll be able to jump LA.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I'm just spouting on who you're going to play. It's mostly because I probably just don't want to see LA for the 3rd time in a row.
Well,
and then I don't know, they'd have to jump. And even if they win the final 5 and pass Vancouver, it's probably going to be Nashville. I'm just saying that I want Vegas as early as possible in the playoffs, just because I think they're going to get better as it goes along.
Handful of people in the chat agreeing with you. The thing I'll push back on is Stone did this whole thing last year, came in and played good in the first round, but you made a great point on Adin Hill. He has come not just crashing back to earth, he's come crashing below earth. Like, he's been brutal now for 6 weeks. Like, they don't have goaltending. So if Hill doesn't turn it around, I don't think there's anyone Vegas can beat in the first round, just on the Hill factor alone. He was huge for them last year.
Yeah, and I mean, they have Logan Thompson too, who can play some games, but Hill's their guy. Like, Hill's the one they want to lean on, and I think the players probably feel most comfortable playing in front of. I'm not taking anything away from them. It's still a really good hockey team. Once they get all those guys back, like that roster that they had on Wednesday in Edmonton doesn't look anything like it's going to look like in game 1 for them in the playoffs. Like Petro, I didn't realize how much guys like that meant to their roster. Stevenson, Petro, even Roy Carrier is like a huge part of their bottom 6, and it's going to be a different lineup, but might as well slay the dragon at some point.
The Oilers came out, looked good without Connor McDavid against that Golden Knights team. What did you make of their effort? And do you think there is a little bit of it, like they went out without 97 and beat the Golden Knights the way they did? Could that be like a source of confidence for the rest of the group?
Yeah, held them to 18 shots. I think they had 4 grade A scoring chances. Vegas did. Just a good, complete team game. It can be tough playing without your captain and your go-to guy. I'm not going to lie. Just even mentally getting ready in the dressing room before and not having him around is something in the back of your mind. But I thought the Holloway line played unreal with Pears and McLeod. And listen, I've talked about Holloway a little bit here too. This is an interesting one because he probably falls out of the lineup after Connor comes back, but it's not easy to do what he's doing. And I didn't do the exact same thing, but getting called up and sent down, you go down, a guy like Dylan will play, call it 20 minutes a night, special teams, first power play, and you come back up and you're in more of a checking role. You're not going to get those special teams. You're not really getting those critical minutes, and it can be a tough adjustment for a lot of guys. I've seen dozens over my career that play top minutes in the American League and they go up in a different role in the NHL and they just cannot make that switch and they can't make that transition. And thought he looked great on Wednesday. His legs were going. Maybe their best forward, just in terms of all over the ice, keeping it simple, driving the net. It's an interesting one for them because, like I said, he probably falls out of the lineup depending on how Knobs wants to play it, depending on who their opponent is. But I thought he played great. And like I said, I thought the entire team, I had a coach. It was actually Glenn Gulletson. Now that I think about it, he was my coach my first 2 years pro, who never liked to take anything away from the team when you won. So I try not to do that. You're not like, hey, well, they had 5 starters missing and Hill didn't look great. Like, a win's a win. You still got to get the job done on your end. And I think they did a great job at that.
It just, with the idea of Holloway having to come out, I do think that's likely what's going to happen. But I don't know. I watched the way he played last game. I look at him as a former first-round pick who goes down the American League and scores. I see a player who's gotten a lot more confident with the puck on his stick throughout the course of this season. And I get Janmark helps you on the PK. And I get he's a high floor kind of player who doesn't make mistakes. I would just be really tempted if I was Chris Knobloch to play Dylan Holloway over a guy like Janmark game 1 of the playoffs because of what he can do for you at 5-on-5. He's a guy who can actually push the river a little bit. Do you think Holloway could succeed when Connor comes back in a 4th line role, or do you think he's someone who needs to be playing with a McLeod or Perry in a top 9 role?
That's the challenging part. And for me, a lot of it depends on the opponent. I think he will get playoff games. I just don't think he starts, especially if it's LA. I look at LA, I think of Vegas is a better matchup for a guy like Matthias. Further on in the playoffs, a team like Vancouver, or early, a team like Nashville better suits Dylan. Teams that want to play north-south, teams that want to play that track meet type style hockey where it's more based off speed and aggression. But I have a lot of time for Matthias, and I understand there's some pushback from Oiler fans, but I have a lot of time for Matthias Janmark. He makes a lot of small, good plays on the ice. You want a guy to block some huge shots in big moments of games. Wear and tear, physicality, he's all in, and I think he's just your prototypical 4th line guy that can get a job done and not make too many noticeable mistakes. But it's a good option to have guys outside your lineup that are pushing, healthy competition. Like, guys that are on that bottom 6, call it the 4th line. At this point in the year, like, you're trying to reserve your playoff spot. Like, you don't want to be starting the playoffs on the outside looking in. So even if a guy like Dylan's there to give everyone a push and make sure everyone's going to the top of their game, that's a good thing. And for Knobs to look outside his lineup and know that he can throw in a young, healthy, energetic forward at any point, it's a good quality to have.
What do you make of this Arizona group? They've actually got quite a few good young players. We saw Dylan Gunther the other day get 4 points. What do you make of them? Do you think they could be a threat to beat Edmonton tonight, I suppose, after that big win the other day?
They're just pesky. They're one of those teams that if you just let them hang around, they know how to score. They put up 6 against Vegas in the 3rd the other day. Obviously the overtime winner versus Vancouver a couple nights ago. Pesky. They stay in games, and if you let them hang around, they will. But I don't see them as too much of a threat. This is a game from start to finish. Talked about how good Edmonton's been on home ice. This is a game where when they come out, you don't even give them a sniff. That's something we used to say in the dressing room all the time, was don't even let them have a feeling or thought that they're in this hockey game from start to finish. Get an early goal and kind of attack it from there. I feel for those guys right now on the other side too. Knowing that their future's up in the air and not even really knowing officially what's going on. I heard that too, that Bill Armstrong's flying out to tell them what's going on. This whole thing is just an absolute gong show. So they're just playing for pride. And, there's guys playing for personal milestones and personal motivation and contracts next year. Like, there's no easy games in the NHL. But this should be a start to finish 60-minute quality effort from the Oil that I think a lot of us are hoping to see.
Yeah, they'll be loose.
Should be.
Question and thoughts just as we gear up for playoffs and roster deployment. Like, thoughts on how we should use Carrick going into the playoffs.
Oh man,
everyday guy.
You know how I feel about Sammy. I mean, I've been pretty out
aligned with you. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Oh man, Listen, I like what Derek Ryan brings to the table, but from here on in, I think Sammy should be playing every game. He's only going to get better as we go along here. And I did it my whole career. I am not trying to paint myself in a lineup that was approaching a massive playoff run and taking a lot of responsibility playing fourth line center, but going in and out of the lineup is extremely tough to do. It's not a fun position. It's tough to get in a rhythm. It's tough to find chemistry with the guys that you're playing with. And I just think the type of hockey that's being played this late in the year and that they're going to eventually play into the playoffs here is Sammy Carrick hockey. I think he's still getting used to probably the foot speed. I know he played in the West, but was not playing at the same caliber that the Oilers do. But he is a guy that I think you guys probably like already, and a lot of Oiler fans like already, but we'll like even more as we go on here. He's going to win huge faceoffs for you. Another guy like Janmark that I talked about that'll block any shot within his vicinity, and I'm calling that he's going to chip in with a couple huge goals at some point, just because that's the type of player he was when I played with him. He's a guy you could always count on, always depend on, quiet, carried a big stick though, and just someone that from here on in, every time I see him not in the starting lineup on X or wherever, whoever puts it out, I always kind of have a little bit of a head shake just because I'm a big fan of his.
Before we let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on out east. We kind of said for basically the last month, like, hey, if one team can just go win like 8 of 10, they're going to get in the playoffs because it was an absolute pillow fight. The Islanders won 6 in a row. Sidney Crosby has willed the Penguins to a 7-0-3 record in their last 10. Who do you think gets in out of that group of Pitt, New York, Washington, and Detroit?
I want to say Pitt and the Islanders. I'll give it to the Islanders. I don't want to say the Islanders are a guarantee, but the way Sorokin and Varlamov are playing right now, they might even win a first round. I don't want to go that far, but those two goalies are a nightmare to play against. It's a wild card spot that I think is still up for grabs. My heart pick says Pitt just because of how well Sid's played. He's my favorite player ever was to watch when I was growing up playing against. Like what he's been able to do in the last couple of months is special. But if you look at the remaining strength of schedules, Detroit's got Toronto on Saturday, and then a back-to-back or 2 more against Montreal. And it's probably the easiest. Pittsburgh has Boston, Nashville, and the Islanders. I don't like that for Pittsburgh. I know they're playing good hockey. Kudos to what Washington and Philly have done. I did not even count them in this conversation, but those are my 2. It's Pitt and Detroit. And depending on how Detroit does on Saturday here in Toronto, they could squeak in. But I would really love to see Sid have another go at it because I think he's earned it.
Crazy thing about like the Pittsburgh schedule, they're almost going to be, I think, rooting for the Islanders the next couple of nights so that the Islanders have nothing to play for on that Wednesday. And maybe you end up getting a couple of guys rested up. Also, you talked about the way the goalies are playing out on Long Island. If it is a Canes Hurricane or a Islanders Hurricanes first round, I think Betway is setting the over under at 3.5 for those games. With the way Freddie Anderson's going, like those games are all ending 2-1 or 1-0.
Low vet hockey, baby. That's what that's going to be.
Enjoy the 2 games this weekend, Luke. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Yeah, go Oil.
There you go.
Yeah.
Luke Gazdic on the Star Mechanical guest line, Edmonton's #1 plumbing and heating company. Check them out online, starmechanical.ca. What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.